we have to know our history, one, and the things that they brought to the table. We have to remember that a lot of these men who love baseball did not get a chance to play it at this level because the opportunities were just not there for them. So we have to make sure that we always honor them and what they've done and what they brought to this sport and just where they've come from.
We get off the bus, all the white ball players were able to go in a restaurant and get something to eat. Okay, all you black boys go around the back. So we go around the back, but you know something again, I made it positive. I knew all the cooking was done by black people. The brothers, which we were the four of us, we would sit in the kitchen. Sit on take a tub, turn it over, sit down and eat, and say, you know, I know you boys don't make no money, so here, you ain't got to pay nothing. I will tell you what, we got the best collard greens, the best cornbread.
Jackie Robinson was good, but he was like the only one who really got recognized for it. I know there was, and I know he got into the league because of, not only because of his like athletic ability or how he played the game, but also because he could like take the downgrading and like the discrimination of being black. But I know there's so many other more like black people back in the day that could have done what he has done.
You know, people crossing over from the Negro Leagues. I just think about laying that foundation for, you know, an opportunity for so many people, you know, coming afterwards. Look across the game today and you see, you know, different colors, you see different backgrounds, you see different cultures, different languages.
I look up to Jackie Robinson because he's a real fundamentally sound baseball player and he beats any obstacles in front of him.
Without him, I wouldn't be playing this game.
Remembering the Negro Leagues, remembering those that came before us, is important because their journey paved the way for me to be here.
You know, I have a quote tattooed on me by Martin Luther King that says, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands during moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in moments of challenges and controversy." Because every day we have a choice.
I can't overstate how important I think it is to remember and to honor, you know, just those who came before us.
I'll remember the past, you remember me.
I'll remember the past.
I will remember the past.
I'll remember the past. You remember me.
I remember the past. You remember me.
That was wonderful. Thanks to the Pirates for helping produce that. Thank you for coming tonight. What a special day this has been, 100 years ago.
We have to know our history, one, and the things that they brought to the table.
A little preview of what we're going to have here in just a moment. The Teenie Harris archives that we're going to have here. We have a representative from there tonight. My name is Joe Block, one of the broadcasters for the Pirates. I'm really honored to be here tonight. You all get a check. Thank you. What a special night this is to think about what happened 100 years ago tonight and what has taken place in that time. And so we're going to chronicle some of that with some great perspectives. We're going to learn a lot tonight. Hopefully you'll be informed and enthralled like I will be sitting up here on stage tonight. So let me introduce everyone that's a part of our evening tonight. And first, Samuel W. Black. He has led and served on numerous committees and councils, authored biographies and articles. He's curated exhibits and works, received grants, scholarships, and awards for his work, his copious work on African American life and history in the United States. And he serves as the director of African American program right here at the Heinz. Please welcome Mr. Samuel W. Black. A teacher and historian at the University of Pittsburgh, Ruck studies the history of sport and how people tell their collective story about who they are to the world. And a very accomplished author. Ruck has written often about baseball, in most notably Raceball, how the major leagues colonized the black and Latin game. And his work has appeared on PBS. Ruck has been was a voting member in 2006 when there was a committee that inducted 18 Negro League players and players from the Caribbean leagues into baseball's Hall of Fame. Representing the University of Pittsburgh, Mr. Rob Ruck. You'll know the name. Sean Gibson has dedicated his life to the preservation of his great-grandfather's Hall of Fame legacy, who you see depicted in many of the photos by Teenie Harris around here tonight. And Sean is served as the executive director of the Josh Gibson Foundation, which does so much good work around here in Pittsburgh as a nonprofit that focuses on childhood education, as well as working as a conduit between, let's say, college student tutors and younger students as well. It's not just baseball related for him. Of course, this will be a very busy year with the Baseball Academy. And for those who aren't familiar with Josh Gibson, of course, he lived as an adolescent here, born in Georgia, lived here in Pittsburgh, and of course played for both the Crawfords and Grays. He was one of the greatest baseball players ever, was inducted in Baseball's Hall of Fame in 1972, second player from the Negro Leagues, inducted as well. And I don't care how you count it up, he had a bunch of home runs, maybe more than anybody who's ever lived. And his great-grandson, who is one of the fine individuals in our area, representing the Josh Gibson Foundation, Mr. Sean Gibson. We're just warming up. Also here, one of the, I don't even need to find my sheet on this one. So one of the greatest hitters of his generation for sure, the Pittsburgh Pirates 1971 World Champion, nicknamed Scoop for his fine work over at first base. There is no current player eligible for baseball's Hall of Fame with more hits and a higher batting average, he had 303 in his career, than Mr. Al Oliver. And last but not least, originally from Pittsburgh's historic Hill District, and born to civil rights leaders Bishop and Mrs. Charles H. Foggie, Charlene Foggie-Barnett is the archive specialist for the expansive Teenie Harris photo archive at the Carnegie Museum of Art. And we're going to see a lot of that over here tonight throughout the evening, so as well. Foggie-Barnett also has a personal connection to the archive. She's in it, as she has been photographed from infancy to adulthood by Teenie Harris. And in addition to her archival research, she also works nationally with the African American community in historic identifications, and also serves as the vice president of the African American Historical and Genealogical Society of Pittsburgh, representing the Teenie Harris Archive, Ms. Charlene Foggie-Barnett. Thank you so much. This is our esteemed panel tonight, and it's going to be my great pleasure to stay out of their way and let them talk and share with you what they know here on this special day. So first, I'd like to maybe tee up both Mr. Black and Mr. Ruck here about just how the Negro Leagues, and especially the Negro National League, which again was founded 100 years ago today, but the impact it had at the time, certainly 20s, 30s, and into the war years on the African American community. And you can take that in any direction.
Okay. I think if we can go back to 1920, February 13, 1920, and try to understand what was happening in African American communities throughout the country. We were coming out of the First World War. We were 1 year removed from the Red Summer. For those of you who don't know, the Red Summer was a time where there were numerous race riots across the country. We were 1 year away from the Tulsa massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921 that wiped out an entire black community and one of the most prosperous in terms of economic development black communities in this country. So to take all of that in consideration, adding the Great Migration, this period of African Americans migrating from the South to northern industrial cities like Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Chicago, Detroit, and so forth, to look at something like baseball as possibly being meaningful in terms of African Americans, their status, their appeal, their self-pride. To me, that's what some of the ideals that went into the founding of the Negro National League. It was an extension of the community by saying that we are American too, and this is one way that we are going to express that. The other aspect is that these Negro League franchises were businesses. And like other businesses in the black community, they were in it for the longevity and for the success, regardless of the hardships. And so I think that a lot of that is not taken in consideration. It's great to look at the pictures and you see the great ball players, but these ball players had families. These ball players came from families. These ball players represented communities and so forth. So there was a lot of pride attached to the founding of Negro National League. Not just guys who really loved the game and wanted to play the game. The other aspect is that we, if we can go back to that time again and understand the place that baseball had in American society. You know, it was probably the #1 sport in American society, baseball and boxing maybe, at that time. And African Americans who have been playing the game since the 1850s, playing baseball since the 1850s, they were not newcomers to the game. So again, that tells you a lot more about the expression of pride and the love of the game that African Americans had.
As ever, well put, Sam. Let me talk a little bit about what came before the creation of the Negro Leagues and build on Sam's analysis. Baseball takes this country by storm at the end of the Civil War, and African Americans are among those who are picking up the game. But you need free time, you need leisure time to be able to devote the energy and the resources to developing the muscle memory to become proficient at this game. And few African Americans have those economic resources. There are black teams. There are some great black players, and this is particularly in the North, but they're driven out of the major leagues by the 1890s. Now, given what else is going on in the 1890s with segregation and sharecropping and Jim Crow, and like today, efforts to disenfranchise African American voters, this isn't the worst thing happening. But it meant something because it deprived African Americans of being in this very visible arena in which Americanism is being defined for the immigrants from Europe. And the view is if a kid can make it in baseball, he can be a citizen. And I think the knee-jerk reaction and the popular wisdom was, well, African Americans are not in the major leagues, not because they're not allowed to be, but because they're not good enough, that they're intellectually and athletically inferior, lack endurance, weak abdominal muscles, cracking under stress. And I think the Negro Leagues prove otherwise, because they create teams and individuals who will play against white major leaguers in barnstorming exhibitions and win 60% of the time. They'll play with and against them in the Caribbean, and they'll gain their respect. And teams like the Grays and the Crawfords might have played 50 or 60 league games a year and another 150 or 200 games against Dormont and Mount Lebanon and McKees Rocks and the Dizzy Dean All-Stars and the like. So they're unifying the community, as Sam put forth. They're giving people a sense of collective self-esteem, and they're bridging that racial gap, which I think is critical at that time. And they're doing all of this despite segregation.
So let me turn to Sean here, Sean Gibson, and so now let's not fast forward, but in the time of your great-grandfather when Josh Gibson is playing, now the Negro National League has been established, and we're talking about in the 30s and now into the 40s. And was there, from what you know, was there a time where now there's starting to be that kind of comfort with players that they can be ball players, or was it always still, characterize that time for a ball player, even of Josh's stature in, let's say, the 30s and 40s now?
Well, first of all, this is a great crowd tonight. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you. I'm the great-grandson of Josh Gibson, and I can only kind of speculate from the stories that I've heard through my family as well as through other players. Rue Foster, who's right there on the photo, is the mastermind behind this whole thing. If it wasn't for Rue Foster, it may not have been a Josh Gibson or a Satchel Paige. You talk about a guy who felt like if we can't join them, we'll beat them, that type of attitude. And for someone to, at that time, when there was segregation going on, and for him to be able to come up with his own league, and not just come up with the own league, has some great baseball players in the league. And for Josh Gibson to be able to play for not just one, but two teams right here in Pittsburgh is phenomenal. And you had two great teams with the Pittsburgh Crawfords and the Homestead Grays. The 1935-36 Crawfords had 5 Hall of Famers on that team with Oscar Charleston, Judy Johnson, Satchel Paige, Cool Papa Bell, and Josh Gibson. It's considered one of the greatest baseball teams, not in the Negro Leagues, but ever. Then you talk about the Homestead Grays, who won 9 pennants in a row. And Josh was on both of those teams. And so when you're talking about the 1930s and the 40s for Josh Gibson, it was a great year for him. I mean, he died in 1947, but, I used to hear players always talk about, these guys never dropped the ball, where they played baseball all year round, meaning they played in the Negro Leagues as well as in the Latin countries as well in the winter ball. So for us, it's just an honor to celebrate the centennial and the legacy of Josh Gibson.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah. And I want to encourage our panel, if you want to chime in, don't wait for me, but I wanted to kind of get everybody a thought here first. So, Scoop, I want to ask you, so now you're coming up in the mid-1960s, starting to play pro ball, make your way into the major leagues at the end of that decade. If you can, talk about the impact that the Negro League players had on you, because now you're talking about a generation removed from that time where it was still a segregated major leagues, but obviously there were a lot of players, ex-players, that are still very much involved in the game at that time. So what was your perspective like as you were coming up as a pro ball player?
Good question. Again, it's great to be back in the Burgh. In 1965, I never forget, I was playing in Gastonia, North Carolina. And of course, segregation was real big back then. You would hear the cat calls from the stands, but you dare not look up in the stands because you didn't want to instigate anything because they weren't going to let up. But the fact of the matter is that I came up and I often thought about what the Negro League players had to go through back in the day. I've seen a lot of films, but in the early 70s, ironically, we used to have these old-timer games. And the Negro League players would always come out and watch us play. And they would tell these stories. Now, at the time, I'm saying to myself, these had to be the greatest players who ever played or who ever lived. Well, as it turned out, I did some research, and they were some of the greatest players to ever have played baseball. And to prove how great they were, I never forget in Houston, Astrodome, when we were playing, and I was with the Pirates, and Satchel Paige was in the dugout. And so someone asked Satchel Paige, how would you pitch Al Oliver? High and tight. And I said, it better be high and tight, because if it's low, I'm going to take you out of here. But these are the things that I enjoyed about the Negro League players. And the amazing thing, what they went through all these years, they had fun. These bus rides, they played 2 or 3 games a day. you ask players to play 2 or 3 games a day, they suddenly have a heart attack. But the fact of the matter is, I have total appreciation for the Negro Leagues. These guys enjoyed playing baseball. They set an example and led the way for people like myself, who came up in the Pirate organization where all of our teams were in the South, except Columbus, Ohio, which was our AAA team. And to go through and to see Klan rallies. Now, I'm from Portsmouth, Ohio. It was segregated. But Klan rallies was unheard of except on TV. But knowing when I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, they were going to have a Klan rally, it was quite a few of us. You know, the Pirates have been known to have black and Latin players down through the years. So and I typically captured the Pirates. And ironically, we, the players, decided to go to the ballpark early because we didn't want to see anybody marching through the streets with these things over their head. And so that was the thing that got me. Here I'm seeing and witnessing things that I would never even dreamed of. And the most important thing to me personally, the man who was responsible for Jackie Robinson coming to the major leagues is from my hometown. And it makes me feel good because here is a white man who was a Christian, and he had to be a Christian to make this move. And he went to Ohio Wesleyan. He had one black player, and they would not give him a key. So this black player stayed with Branch Rickey on his trip at Ohio Wesleyan. Branch Rickey said if he ever had another chance in his life that a black player, Latin player, would not have the opportunity to play, he was going to stop it. And that is what comes behind all of this. And last but not least, I'll get into other things later, my first manager at Gastonia, North Carolina, was Clyde Soothforth, the scout that Jackie Robinson sent to scout Jackie Robinson. So there's a tie-in. My first manager, my homeboy who did his thing, and thank God he did it, because who knows? I may not be sitting here today. I may not have had that opportunity. But I thank the Negro League players for their fortitude, for their strength, wisdom, the enjoyment that they gave fans all over the country. Because I'll be honest with you, I could not have done it.
We're getting a lot of perspective tonight. You know, it's hard to canvas 100 years in 100 minutes, but Charlene, one of the things that we have a great advantage of now is having photographs, right? So Teenie Harris, who played in the Negro Leagues, can you give us a little bit of idea of why, first of all, he was motivated to chronicle what was taking place, and what kind of methods do we have now today to interpret the history of Negro League baseball, and really just baseball in the African American community through the years?
Good questions. First off, I agree with the panel. This is a wonderful audience, so thank you for coming out on this cold night. And I'd also like to say that I didn't get this sliding into first base or even trying. I dropped a table on my toe. That was stupid a month ago. And I also want to say that before I answer your question, my father would be so impressed and shocked that I'm even sitting here, because in the early 60s, I would go to Forbes Field and I would hardly pay attention to anything. I was eating literally my peanuts, popcorn, and Cracker Jack and digging for the prize. But he was explaining the Negro Leagues to me and the importance of it. And then, as you'll see on some of these slides, my father was Bishop Foggie, and Branch Rickey and Jackie Robinson and a number of other players are photographed by the inimitable Teenie Harris in my father's pulpit for fundraisers for the NAACP and other organizations. So for me, the importance is that, first off, there's our handsome Teenie Harris right there. And if you look in the first row on the far right, second in, that's Teenie. He was one of the founding members of the Crawfords and a player who loved the game. Anybody who knew Teenie Harris knew that Teenie was a man of the community. So, and he did things that he loved, but he also was a working man. This collection of nearly 80,000 images is based on working for the Pittsburgh Courier newspaper and also for things that were important to Teenie. Being a player, being a Pittsburgher, and having access to these players, he got to shoot things that other photographers didn't get to. So these dugout shots that are kind of behind the scenes shots, just the variety of shots that he could get of anybody in the community is what the Carnegie is most proud of, because representing Teenie, I feel like I'm representing a godfather of the black community. He explains our community without a single word. He's the proof of how we lived, the proof of how we made it, the proof of how things like the Negro Leagues actually transpired. And so I'm just very proud to represent Teenie Harris, and I love baseball to this day, so thank God for my dad and thank God for Teenie.
And before we depart later on tonight, too, we'll have a lot more detail if you're interested in any of these particular organizations that we're talking about. Samuel, you grab the mic. You got something there?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, you're getting ready. Well, I wanted to peek a question to you, and then I want you guys to converse too. I'll help lead you, but I did want to kind of bring it in to more recent times, if we can kind of go through that century. And so, the Pirates. Among the teams that, let's say in the late 80s, right, Rob, you tipped me off to this and did some research on it, but the Pirates were one of the teams where Major League Baseball started to re-emphasize, or actually just start to emphasize the importance of Negro League Baseball about at that time, and now we see that as a commonplace occurrence now. Of course, the Pirates among many teams, all the teams really, that have some sort of celebration. Why do you think? Why do you think that took place? Why do you think that's important? That we have now made that a common thing, and maybe some of the detail on how that came into being, because there was a long gap there, right, where Negro League Baseball was just a silent piece of history, and now it's more integrated with how Major League Baseball operates these days.
I think the important moment comes in early April 1987 on the 40th anniversary of Robinson entering the Major Leagues. Al Campanis, the Dodgers general manager, appears on Nightline. He wasn't supposed to be the person. It was supposed to be Don Newcomb, the Dodger pitcher and Negro Leaguer, but his flight was messed up. So Campanis, who's 70, steps in despite having had a very long day, including opening game ceremonies in Houston Astrodome. And Ted Koppel is asking him, why after 40 years are there no black managers, no black owners, no black general managers, which of course there were during the Negro Leagues. And Campanis is flustered. And rather than simply say it's because we just haven't dealt with all the racism and discrimination in the game, he says, well, they lack certain essentials. And it gets worse and worse for him, where he starts to say things which are portrayed as racist. Now, Al Campanis was a teammate of Jackie Robinson's in Montreal, and he offered to fight for him when Jackie couldn't fight. And he was one of the two guys, white guys, that Jackie invited on a barnstorming tour at the end of the season. And there were 3 photographs in Al Campanis' office of Jackie, Roberto Clemente, and Sandy Koufax. But Campanis is forced to leave the Dodgers. Reggie Jackson says this is the best thing that's happened to blacks in baseball since Jackie, because Major League Baseball was embarrassed. And that's how often you get institutions to change. And they did a great job, I think, in making the integration of the front office a critical thing to do. And they largely did that, not ownership, of course. Now, that, I think, inspired the Pirates to do what they did in 1988. It's not as if people hadn't gone to them before, asking them to do things. But they said, great idea, but then your phone calls aren't answered. You get the drift. Finally, after Al Campanis in 1987, the Pirates held a night at the ballpark in September 1988, the 40th anniversary of the last Negro League World Series ever played, won by the Grays against Willie Mays and the Birmingham Black Barons, and they invited all the living members they could find to those teams back. Cool Papa Bell, Buck Leonard. They invited other people from the community who had played for the Grays and the Crawfords, like Reverend Harold Tinker, Willie Pope, Clarence Bruce. And that broke the ice. The Wall Street Journal and the New York Times covered it. The Pirates handed out a set of baseball cards that Al Gordon, who was in the position Joel Gray now holds with the Pirates, designed. And I think baseball teams realized this is important. Now, it's not only that the Pirates celebrated the Negro Leagues. Carl Barger, the president of the Pirates, apologized for the discrimination of baseball. And I think that was a turning point.
If I can add, I'm not a Pittsburgher, but I'm from Cincinnati, and so the Big Red Machine is, for those of you who know and remember, were really one of the Pirates' rivals in the 70s. But what I distinctly remember is 17 years before what the Pirates did in 1988, the Pirates fielded the first all-black baseball team in 1971. And that is one of the things, that and Dave Parker are two of the things that ingratiated me to the Pittsburgh Pirates in the 1970s. I mean, the Big Red Machine was still #1, but there was a lot of, a great deal of respect for the Pirates. And then once I got to know and understand this history, to see the transformation, you know, as a historian, you know, I have to say that the Civil Rights Movement had a lot to do with what took place post-1960 in Major League Baseball. Those types of strides that are taking place, Frank Robinson becoming manager of the Cleveland Indians in, I think, '74. You know, so those types of things, there was always pressure on Major League Baseball going back to the 20s when the Pittsburgh Courier was initiating campaigns and editorials to integrate Major League Baseball, and behind the scenes trying to nudge the Pittsburgh Pirates, because you had these great players right here in Pittsburgh, you know, to sign some of these guys. You know, so although it took a while for that to happen, the Pirates sort of kicked the door down. And that's one of the things that Rob is illustrating, that maybe by 1988, but in 1971, that was absolutely revolutionary. You know, to field that team, that's right.
My daughter, she's in the back. So I'll sit right there.
Oh, well, he'll talk. Sorry to interrupt you, Samuel.
No, I'm
Yeah.
done.
Scoop, you want to talk about being there that night?
Yes. Being a Reds fan, I would not hold that against you, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm from Southern Ohio myself, and I grew up a Reds fan, but once I graduated from high school in '64, I became a Pirate fan, so that's, but you know what? We could not beat the Cincinnati Reds in the playoffs for nothing in the world. And you know, like in hockey, they have assists. I'm waiting on the Reds to give the Pirates an assist for sending them to 3 World Series. I'm still waiting on that. But you know, September the 1st, 1971 was historical. They don't talk much about it today, which I don't get it. I just don't get it. Major League Baseball, in all honesty, has dropped the ball. We're talking about history. Jackie Robinson, yes, but to field an all-minority team. And what was ironic about that night was Woody Fryman was pitching for Philadelphia. And in 71, if some of you in here, or at least 60, can remember, is Woody Fryman was always tough on left-hand pitching. And usually at that time, either I would have played center field and Bob Robertson would have played first, or I wouldn't have played. Bob Robertson would have played first base, and Gene Clines would have played center. But that night, Bob Robertson did not play. And we still talk about that to this day. He has no idea why he didn't play against Woody Fryman. Of course, you know, I went on and had a good night anyway, but the fact of the matter is this. That night, we always had 6 brothers out there anyway when Doc was pitching. So that was 6. The whole outfield was minority. Dave Cash played third base that night. Jackie Hernandez at short. Rennie Stennett at second. I'm at first, and Doc's pitching. Okay. In the 4th inning, it dawned on me. I looked over to Dave Cash, and I said, you know what? We got 9 brothers out here, man. I said, Dave, I mean, this is something, you know? And I'm just glad that I had a chance to be part of history. It never was done before, and it has not been done since. But you know what? About that year of 1971, in spring training, as most of you know, I did not like to be platooned. Bob Robertson didn't like to be platooned. Gene Clines did not like to be platooned. We had a team, Hebner did not like to be platooned, but we had a team in spring training where we had made a vow that we were going to knock against all of our goals. We're going to throw them aside. Whoever plays, we'll pull for them. It's amazing, and I travel a lot speaking, and I always say this: let the 1971 Pittsburgh Pirate team prove one thing. It doesn't matter where you come from. If you all come together as one, we did. We said in spring training. We did it, and we had one common goal, and that was bring a world championship back to Pittsburgh. And we did it, and the reason why we brought a world championship back to Pittsburgh, because we all gave up on our personal goals. All of us could hit. There was no question about that. But we sacrificed our goals to bring a world championship back to the city of champions. And that is one day I never will forget as long as I live. It was history that year. And it was amazing coming through the Fort Pitt Tunnel. My grandson made his trip with me today, and every time I come through that Fort Pitt Tunnel, it just sends chills. I mean, 1971, how long ago was that? You know, I'm only 50 years old, and and I'm trying to figure it out. I am 73, and I feel good about it. I'm still mobile, but you know, when we came through that Fort Pitt Tunnel, I didn't ever think we would ever get to the ballpark. The fans were fired up, and that's something that I will always remember. It's the only World Series I ever played in. I missed 2 others by 1 game. But the fact of the matter is that because of that, when I come back to Pittsburgh, as my grandson would say, I cannot go nowhere in Pittsburgh without hearing the word scoop. I love it. I really do. I love to hear that. So you can keep calling me Scoop.
Well, the Negro National League turned 100 today, so don't feel so bad about 73. But Sean, I wanted to bring you back in and ask, so today, at 100, the legacy of the Negro Leagues, in your opinion, and from the perspective of being in the family of one of the greatest players from the Negro Leagues, and Josh Gibson, how do you maintain the legacy of the Negro Leagues today?
Well, there's several ways. You know, being descendant of Josh Gibson has been great. It's been a great honor. And, you know, we do have some other family members here I want to recognize. So we have Mr. Napier over here. You've probably seen a picture of Edius Napier on the screen. So his grandson and his son is here, right here, the Napier family. Play for the Grays. And then I also have my buddy, Richard Osbury. He's over here. He's Vic Harris. Richard, where you at, Rich? Vic Harris's family is here. I always say this because when I leave, if somebody else, is anybody else here from the families? Because I don't want to mess up. Nobody? Okay. Well, I did see my daughter, so I want my daughter and my grandkids to come up here and sit up here in the front. That's what I was trying to get them to come up here. So my daughter and my 2 grandkids are here, so they're Gibsons. So, you know, one of the things that we're doing to not only celebrate the 100, but also to carry on the legacy is through our foundation. We've been around since 1992. Josh Gibson Jr., my grandfather, started the foundation. And the most important thing about the foundation was not only recognizing Josh Gibson, but all the great Negro League baseball players, as well as other family members of the great baseball players who played in Pittsburgh for Pittsburgh Croppers, as well as the Homestead Grays. But I think the most important thing with the Centennial is, for us, it's not a local thing. This is a national thing, you know. So the Negro Leagues is not just about the Grays and the Crawfords, but it's about all the great teams, all the great players, and all the history outside of Pittsburgh. But not only that, but we still had the 2 best teams. I go back and forth with guys from Cincinnati, Cleveland, Kansas City, but I feel as though this is a sports town. Pittsburgh has always been a sports town. We have great teams, and for some reason, not for some reason, but for what I like the best is they don't forget about the Homestead Grays or the Pittsburgh Crawfords. And they've always made sure that they included the Grays and the Crawfords into their sports history. Plenty of things of Josh Gibson around the city. You got the mural with the Pirates on Ross Street with Josh Gibson. You have the Homestead Grays Bridge. You have Josh Gibson Field in the Hill District. There was an opera on Josh Gibson. Who would have thought an opera on Josh Gibson? Who would have thought an opera? You know, I've never even been to an opera. So when the opera, when Dan Sonnenberg decided an opera on Josh Gibson, and not only that, it was the first ever world premiere opera in 80 years for the Pittsburgh Opera. And it was a black man. So he made history again by having a first and only world premiere opera in Pittsburgh. So there's a lot of things that we're grateful for of being the legacy of Josh Gibson. And people always ask me the question about Josh Gibson's death. Did he die as a bitter man? You know, people, that's the, like, when I'm like, how would you know that if you're not in Josh Gibson's body? What I always say, Josh Gibson and the Negro League baseball players did not make that choice. Society made that choice for them, and Rue Foster made a better choice for them. Believe me, we all know they would have loved to play in the majors. Would have loved to play in the majors. But at that time, they weren't allowed, of course, because of the color of skin. So Rue Foster came up with the Negro Leagues, and some of the greatest baseball players to ever play the game played. And it was unfortunately that some of the major leaguers or white Americans back then have not had a chance to see. I get questions a lot about Babe Ruth and Josh Gibson. They say, well, Josh Gibson is the black Babe Ruth. I say, no, Babe Ruth is the white Josh Gibson. No, don't say that. Right. You know? They say Babe Ruth is the house, is the Yankees, he built the house in Yankee Stadium. That's Babe Ruth's house. I say, well, Josh Gibson got the furthest home run in Yankee Stadium. So there you go. So, and I always get the question that I don't know if Josh Gibson would have been as great. Nobody knows that. You know, I never say Josh Gibson's the greatest. He's one of the greatest. He's not the greatest because you can't say Babe Ruth is the greatest. He's one of the greatest because he didn't play against the black players. So when you talk about that era, you can't say who was great, who was not great. You can say they're one of the greats because they didn't get a chance to play some of the greatest players. So thank you.
This is so enriching tonight. Thank you for sharing this stuff. Samuel and Sean, you just touched on this too, and I just throw this open to anyone that wants to comment. But you know, thinking about where American society has been and is, and the role of Negro League baseball, but baseball in general, with assimilating African American baseball with the major leagues, and then going forward from there, as Scoop was talking about, it didn't just happen overnight where it was as peaceful as it hopefully is today. But if anyone wants to jump in on the impact of baseball, civil rights, and just how over the last 100 years we've progressed as a society through baseball. Anyone have some thoughts on that?
A couple of things I think is very important. I don't want us to leave feeling that all Negro League baseball players, their ultimate goal was to play in Major League Baseball. Because that puts us into this sort of trap of thinking that because Major League Baseball was all white, that it was better. I think Rob had pointed out early on that you had competition, whether it was exhibition games or not. These guys just wanted to play with the best players. And when I mean these guys, I'm not just talking about African-American ball players. The white ball players wanted to play with the best players. I know there's a quote from Walter Johnson, the great Washington Senators pitcher, who really wanted, and this was in the 20s, really wanted the Senators to sign some of the Negro League players that he played against in these exhibition games. It was really the bureaucracy and the ownership of Major League Baseball that drew the line. And Rob mentioned as early as the 1890s, they drew that color line. What took place after that, especially when you had Jack Johnson as the heavyweight champion of the world from 1908 to 1915, that had a serious impact on race relations in this country. But these ball players knew, and great players know great players, and great players want to compete. Michael Jordan didn't invent being a competitive athlete. You know, Josh Gibson was very competitive. Walter Johnson, Dizzy Dean, they were all very competitive athletes and wanted to play against the best players, regardless of whether they were African American or not. A.B. Chandler, the commissioner, of Major League Baseball, they began to fine Major League Baseball players who would play in these exhibition games against Negro League players. One of the reasons why is because they were losing those games. The other reason is that it was beginning to accelerate the agitation for integrating Major League Baseball. So what I'm saying is that it was really an act upon the players. Branch Rickey did come along and finalize that, but it was the players who knew and understood what was going on the other side of the fence. and how great those players were on the other side of the fence. And wouldn't it be great for the game if we all played against each other on a daily basis?
I think that your question regarding civil rights, remember that baseball integrates in 1947. Supreme Court does not unanimously overturn Plessy versus Ferguson in Board versus Education and integrate public education until 1954. And I think that baseball softens racial attitudes. And there are countless examples of white people watching African Americans play baseball and think, well, why not give them a chance elsewhere? So I think that has that effect. And Martin Luther King in particular would tell Jackie and Hank Aaron and others how important they were to the struggle he was helping to advance. I think it's important, though, to remember that a lot is lost when the Negro Leagues go under. We lose black teams, black general managers, black owners. Most Negro Leaguers lose their jobs. The major leagues, which were very reluctant to accept Jackie. In fact, when there's a vote, it's 15-1 against accepting Jackie, and Happy Chandler, the commissioner, overrules it. They're afraid they're going to lose revenue. They're not going to have Negro League teams to rent their ballparks to. They're going to be black fans, so white fans will stay away. It worked out okay for them in many ways. But the Negro Leagues go under and the black community loses control over its own sporting life. And I think the meaning of sport in black America begins to change. And I think there's a loss there. This was a world African Americans had created and maintained and made excellent. And integration doesn't give the opportunity of black teams joining the majors. Even though the Negro Leagues petitioned the majors, accept us as a high minor league. That didn't happen. And it took a long time to get black managers, and we're still waiting for other changes. So I think there's some really wonderfully positive things in terms of the fabric of this country, but there are losses as well.
You know, when I went to Texas from here, I became pretty good friends with Bobby Bragan, who spent some time here in Pittsburgh. And we became real good buddies. And one time I was sitting in his office, and he said, "Scoop, I was one of those guys that was going to sign this petition, along with Harry the Hat Walker, several other whites. But Bobby Bragan told me, and I will always believe him, he's already passed and gone. But he said, Scoop, one of the worst mistakes that I've ever made in my life was to sign a petition for Jackie Robinson not to play Major League Baseball. But what he told me was, and I could identify, he said, look, I'm from Alabama. That was just the way I was raised. But when it came down to signing, he had to sign because that was the only way that he knew how. That's the way he was raised. But he says, and he meant it, it was one of the worst mistakes that he had ever made is stopping Jackie Robinson from coming to the Dodgers. And when he told me that, after he told me that, we became real good buddies. And I will always respect him because it was heartfelt. A lot of people talk the talk, but very few can walk the walk. And by him telling me that, I will always respect that man because a lot of people will not admit wrongdoings, and he did. And I will always respect Bobby Bragan for that.
Ex-player and Pirates manager. So now tomorrow we'll wake up and hopefully everyone has a Valentine's Day card for their loved one, which I got on my way here tonight. But we begin the second century, right, of commemorating the birth of the Negro National League, and of course there were predecessors, leagues prior, but thinking about where we go from here. In baseball, thoughts on what we can learn from this first century and where we can go from here. Anyone have a thought? Charlene? Yeah.
I'd just like to encourage people to look into Teenie's archive. One of the things that, one of my goals working with the archive is to point out that Teenie Harris is explaining the middle ground, which is very important. We all know about the stories of slavery, Reformation, civil rights, and on through, and we've had a two-term African-American president. We know those big hits. We need the stories that were just told by these gentlemen to explain those connections and how those dots connected. Teenie explains it, and we need to spend more time learning the middle ground. We need to tell those stories to our children, not just the big stories, not just the things that seem shocking or exaggerated and catch your attention. We need some very simple stories told. And being the rah-rah person for Teenie, I'm telling you, he has stories that you would not believe. These samples of images are not, these are just Negro League images. We have majors as well, and so many other stories, and the background stories about how some of these players even got to be involved with the minors, with the Negro Leagues and the majors. So please take the time, go on your computer, Google Teenie Harris, and you can see close to 80,000 photos of anything that you want in Pittsburgh history. But if you really want to delve into Pittsburgh Negro League history, look at Teenie Harris.
Well, for us, the next 100 years, hopefully, you know, we got more kids playing baseball, more African-American kids. Yeah. So one of the things that we're doing through our foundation, we do have the Josh Gibson Baseball Academy, and actually one of our centennial events on June 26th to June 28th, we'll be hosting a Josh Gibson Youth Classic where we'll be inviting other teams from other cities, and they will represent their Negro League city. So all the teams that come into Pittsburgh will wear Negro League uniforms, and all the awards will be named after Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige, and Cool Papa Bell. So I think for the next 100, that's the thing that's we're most focused on, is teaching that next generation to educate them on these great men, because as we all know, when we're gone, it's our younger youth who will be able to carry on this legacy for us once we're dead and gone. So that's one of the things that we really strive for through our foundation. And also, not only as athletes, but like you said, as one may be an owner. You know, we would love to say some African-American owners, African-American managers. You know, they have the Rooney Rule right now, and we still can't seem to get more African-American coaches in the NFL. But we know Dusty Baker took over the Astros, and hopefully there's no more cheating going on. So, but I think the most important thing for the next 100 is that for all of us to be able to educate all Americans about the game of baseball and about the game of life, because that's most important, is the life game as well as your education, and that's what we try to strive through for our next 100.
Thank you. What? You'll go, Rob, yeah. Don't let me ever stop you.
In 1988, when the Pirates did their celebration, Doran Levine, who was writing for the New York Times, interviewed Bart Giamatti, the commissioner of baseball, about the event. Giamatti said, "We must never lose sight of our history. Insofar as it is ugly, never to repeat it. And insofar as it is glorious, to cherish it." And I think in a moment when the bully in the bully pulpit is encouraging white supremacy in this country, we need to look back at this history and use it to build social capital in the communities, which is something that Sean and the foundation have been doing, something the History Center's been doing, something the Carnegie Museum has been doing, and I think we need to encourage and support those efforts.
And I'll just add on to say, again tonight, if you have the curiosity that I know I do, of what our panelists are involved in to find out more, I'm sure you can get a little bit more information too before you leave tonight, as much as your local libraries as well too, right? I mean, just researching on your own time and finding more information on what has taken place. And I love the Giamatti quote, because if you think about what has happened, that's how you learn about what may be coming forward here too. Joel, are you trying to tell me something?
Oh no, I was just going to say Q&A, maybe.
You want to do Q&A?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we can do that. I mean, you took the mic, so I said.
I'm not asking a question. No.
I don't know. We got karaoke or something going on over there. Joel's a great singer. So this is a great time tonight where you guys get to ask some questions now. And we'll have a mic come around. Are you doing it, Joel?
Yeah.
Okay, Joel's going to come around, so raise your hand.
Me and Jonah.
Okay, great. And also, in a moment, we're going to mix in the raffle tonight. So each one of our panelists is going to draw a winner. Yep. You win stuff and learn. All right. So we have somebody right here. I know the lights are hard to see. Someone in the back first?
Before we do this, I'm Joel Grabe. I work for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So thank you guys for coming out to this event. The only thing I ask is if you ask a question, you have to stand up, tell us your name and where you're from. That way we can have a good conversation.
My name's Mike Seed. I'm from Sewickley. When I was a kid, my mom took us to Pirate games. We used to sit up in the cheap seats, and we always wanted autographs. This is from Mr. Oliver. She used to take us to get ice cream at a Dairy Queen in the Hill District on Center Avenue. There's a bar there called Name of the Game. We used to see Pirates players. That claiming I saw you there, but we saw Doc Ellis there and approached him for an autograph, and he said, "What the hell are you kids doing out this late? Like, Mr. Ellis, can we just get an autograph?" And in time, we saw tons of players there, so we told our classmates in school, "Go to the Name of the Game near a Dairy Queen, and you'll get autographs." They would reluctantly sign them. My question is, did you ever go there, and why did everybody hang out there?
Got to find a place to get a sandwich that time of night, right?
I'm going to need this mic, so you might want to use one of those.
Well, the reason why we went there, you know, we always liked dessert back in those days. You know, over the last 15 years, I've stayed away from dessert, but we have stayed. That was a team. It seemed like we always hung out at the same places, and I was one of those kind of guys. I didn't hang out much. You know, I was the king of room service. And when we traveled, I loved room service. And I was in bed by midnight. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, you couldn't hang out too long with Doc Ellis. And most people in here would not believe that Doc Ellis was the best friend that I had in baseball. And they say, how can this happen? Here's a guy who doesn't drink or smoke. I never drank or smoked. But I think what happened, the difference in us evened things out. And I left Doc many a night. But I had to get some sleep. My dad told me when I was in the 4th grade, he said, "Son, it's 2 things you got to do. Is get your rest and stay out of the streets." And I'm going to tell you what, that paid off for me even to this day. I'm still the same way. My grandsons will tell you. My daughter and son will tell you. My grandsons call me Peepaw. And I just believe in rest. You know, I plan on being around here a lot longer. But you got to get your rest. You can't burn that. And, you know, we prayed every day. And so you had to be sharp and you had to be ready. But, yes, I do recall those days. Good memory. Good memory.
Well, Scoop, since you're on the mic, let's have you do first. You want to do Charlene first? Ladies first. Joel, you're so smooth. All right, get your raffle tickets out. First drawing. What's the prize? Pirate's pillow? Well, hopefully we're not putting you to sleep. This has been more entertaining than I thought. A pillow. My pillow.
Okay, ready? Number 338038.
Who needs a pillow? All right.
All right.
All right, thank you. Okay. How about, yeah, go
Hi,
ahead. sir.
my name is Rico. I'm from Avalon right now. But Sean, you touched on the Rooney Rule. Do we think that the Pirates, it's a two-part question. Do you think that Major League Baseball will do something like the Rooney Rule? And how do you all feel about Pittsburgh making strides like that to get black owners, managers, and coaches?
Well, I mean, I wish every league had the Rooney Rule, not just Major League. I mean, not just NFL, but all the sports teams. We can always use some minority coaches in all the sports. You know, we had one with Lloyd McClendon a few years ago. So, as far as what the Pirates are doing, you know, we've had several black baseball players on the team. We got rid of some of the good ones, like Sterling Marte. But, but yeah, getting back to the Rooney Rule, I feel as though that all the, not just NFL, but all the sports teams should have that. And we should see more African Americans. There's a lot of African American coaches out there that are assistant coaches that should be able to move up to head coaches. I mean, we saw this recently with Eric Bieniemy, pronounce his name, from the Chiefs. I thought he should have had a shot, you know. But, you know, I think Rob or Sam might have said it. You know, we're talking about a time when it's 2020, and we're still talking about the same stuff they were talking about 50 years ago. You know, I mean, that's the sad part about it. You know, here we are celebrating the Negro League's 100th anniversary, and we're still talking about some of the same things that my grandfather went through 70 years ago. So until all of us as one become one and do better, we're going to be still talking about this 20 more years later. So that's my perspective on it.
And with that, Samuel's going to draw another raffle ticket. What are they winning?
This is a tumbler.
This is a tumbler, so we're also driving you to drink. 337-853.
Winner?
337.
Going once?
Okay. Oh, no. We have a question.
Going once?
All right. 337-853 for the tumbler. All right. All right. This is good. 338-162. Tumbler.
Just somebody come up. Just anybody. Just come
Anybody.
up. Just somebody
You
come
ask a
take
question,
this.
you get the tumbler.
Just somebody come take this.
Just ask a
Whatever it is. I mean, Sam's going, that's Cincinnati, Ohio, man.
337-993.
If nobody comes up, just the first row. Come on up.
First row, everyone gets a time. All right. Okay,
I know,
993.
Right? Is that it?
I like it. That's good. Where's our next question coming from? I can't see.
Hello.
Sometimes.
This question is for Rob Ruck. This is Tom from Pittsburgh. Hey, Rob, can you take us into the room when that first class of Negro League players were going to be admitted to the Hall of Fame? How many? What was the process, and how was the criteria, established to sort of measure them against the existing criteria?
And this is 2006, so this is after we've. Yeah. Right.
Right. Satchel is the first Negro Leaguer to make it, and that's 1971. Then Josh and Buck, and a number of great guys. 7 of the first 11 played for either the Grays, the Crawfords, or both teams. underscoring how good Pittsburgh was. A few more were elected by veterans committees. And to be selected for the Hall of Fame, you have to get 75% of the votes cast, either by the Baseball Writers of America or by these special committees. So there had been a very massive research job done in the early 2000s, sponsored by the Hall of Fame, about the Negro Leagues. And that prompted the Hall of Fame to say, we need to have a special election to look at Negro League and Caribbean ball players. People nominated. There were 39 finalists. There was a panel of 12 people who were brought together in Tampa, chaired by Fay Vincent, who had been the commissioner of baseball for a while after Giamatti. And then there was a discussion of all these people. 18 people. One woman, Effa Manley, owner of the Newark Eagles. One white man, John Wilkerson, owner of the Kansas City Monarchs. And 16 players from black baseball and the Caribbean, including Cumberland Posey Jr., who not only played for, managed, and owned the Homestead Grays, but would later not only be inducted into the Hall of Fame for baseball, but into basketball too, because of his old teams in Pittsburgh, the Loendis and the Monticellos, making him the only individual in both Halls of Fame. You know, I think that the real tragedy of that night, and I think I can say this now, was that Buck O'Neil wasn't elected. I mean, Buck O'Neil did more than all the other friggin' historians and documentary filmmakers and people who wrote about the Negro Leagues put together in getting the story of the Negro Leagues told. And I think he's, frankly, the star of Ken Burns' baseball series. Now, he would be brought into the Hall of Fame in a different way, but I think it was tragic that that committee did not elect Buck that day while he was still alive.
Great insight. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, that's a great question, too. Yeah. What are we giving away there, Joel? Season tickets? A Clemente puzzle.
338-175.
338-175. All right. Yeah, actually, I have it. There you go. See? Actually, I like it. Where's our next question coming from? We got some hands on this side, 2 hands back here. Yes, sir.
Mark Fallon from Homestead. My question was to Rob too, and it was concerning Composey. But since you already answered it, he's buried over in Munn Hall. If anybody ever wants to visit his grave, I'm president of the Homestead Cemetery over there. But my question is about the banners that are going to go on the Homestead Grays Bridge. Is anybody on the panel involved with that? Do you know that, Rob or Sean? Yeah. Thanks, Sean.
So the Homestead Grays Bridge had banners we put up a few years ago, and they were damaged by the sun, and some actually have been blown off. So recently, the county contacted me to get some of the family members together to put up new banners, which will be up coming this spring, this summer. They haven't set a date yet, but these banners will actually be full-length, long banners that can go down the light pole, and we'll have some new players on there as well. Working with the county, my goal was to advocate for local players that played in the Negro Leagues, the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Grays, but local ties, like the Napiers and the Vic Harrises and the Clarence Bruces. These guys still have family members here. Nothing wrong with Satchel Paige and the other guys, but not too many times Satchel Paige's family is coming to Pittsburgh. So I wanted that people who actually live here in Pittsburgh drive across that bridge and see their family member on the bridge. So the bridge banners will be up hopefully this spring or the summer, waiting for Rich Fitzgerald to make that call.
That's wonderful.
Well, listen, if I pull a number, everybody get a prize. I'm like Oprah. You get a prize, you get a prize. Everybody, I'm calling all the numbers out. Okay, what is the gift?
What's the prize?
Make sure you wake
Well,
up.
alarm clock. Well, listen, so we got these shirts. I'm promoting our shirts, yep. If you win this, you get a shirt, too. Just go down and see our staff. We're selling these shirts to raise money for the foundation. So whoever number this is also get a shirt. I'm calling the last three, 870. 870. Come on, please don't do that. 870, going once. Okay, we're gonna do this one more time. Everybody, somebody, I didn't see nobody leave.
Probably in the bathroom.
870, you got it? You need a
I need a clock. You get the clock.
You need a clock. You got to go to the game, man. All right. Last 3 digit, 9, 5, and whatever number you want it to be. Whatever. 2. It's 2.
But it could be 3.
Who got 3?
7.
You got 959. Come on down.
Good enough. Sounds great.
959. Come on down.
Yeah, you get it.
All right.
See, aggressiveness pays off. Clock and a shirt.
It's 953.
All right. Good enough.
Hi, I'm Skip Napier. I'm grandson of UD Napier, who you've seen up there. He's caught for the Grays and the Crawfords. I was wondering, this question's for anybody from the Pirates, actually. I was wondering why the Negro League statues were removed from PNC Park in the last few years. They used to go and used to see them every time, and it was a great thing for our heritage. And I know we have Heritage Night, but I seem to only see that kind of stuff on Heritage Night. I'd like to see it a little bit more on any of the other nights that I'd like to go to the ball game. I just wonder if there's a reason why.
And I don't know that answer from Legacy Square, right? They were there just a couple years ago, if I remember. Does anyone else have any idea? Because I don't want to give you the wrong information. So see me afterward, and I'm going to look it up for you, okay? I'm going to talk to somebody that would know, okay? Thanks. Yeah. Joel, yes. Joel works for the Pirates, too.
I'm newer to the Pirates, too. I don't have a direct answer, but I can tell you we are working to get something back into the ballpark. So I can't make any grand announcements, but to my knowledge, we are working to get something back.
I'll try to get you a complete answer, too. So, okay, yep. Are we giving away like sandals or something next, or what do we got? Okay. Go ahead.
Luke Eamon from the north side. I've got a question for Mr. Oliver. Who's your favorite baseball player growing up?
Very good question. This is going to hurt a little bit. Vader Pinson, when I was a child, I was a Cincinnati Reds fan, and Vader Pinson was my favorite player. Now, of course, you know, I got to add, the favorite of all time was Roberto Clemente. That's a good question. I very seldom have had it asked to me, but Vader Pinson was my favorite. And be honest with you, he belongs to baseball's Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Didn't you guys end up with about the same amount of hits, too? I mean, would
Very
you
close.
ever have thought that growing up as a kid you'd have as many or more hits as Vader Pinson?
And played against him, too.
That's right, yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. Who would ever thought playing against Willie Mays and Hank Aaron and all those bubblegum cards you used to collect? I mean, that means they played a long time. That's what it means. But, you know, I just want to say this, and this is my last time that I get to talk tonight. I just want to say this. This panel that we've had here tonight, what I like about it, it was heartfelt. It was from the heart. We didn't hold back on what we had to say. And that's very important for the audience and for us, because there were some things said tonight that I didn't know. And that's the thing that I can appreciate more than ever, because my grandson came with me, and this night has been an education from him. Now he can go back to Marshall University and tell his friends about the Negro League history. which very few at Marshall know, but it's a great school. But I just want to give a shout out. I've known Sean for a long time. For him to have done what he has done in all these years, he could have quit, because we talk pretty often, but he is determined to keep his great-grandfather's legend alive, and we have to respect him, back him, and applaud him for the job he has done.
Thank you, Al.
And I think we need to applaud this entire panel tonight, too, because this has been enlightening and informative. And if we could ever have a conversation that could last for hours and learn something new every minute, this would be that kind of group tonight. Do we have any more time? I can't find anybody that can tell me that answer right now, because I'd love to. One more question. Okay, so we have one more. I was hoping to be 10 more. We have one more. Go ahead. How prevalent were Latino players in the Negro Leagues?
In the early 20th century, when baseball was marred by a color line in this country, people who were black, white, Latino played in Cuba and in the islands. The best of them played in the United States in the summer. Some 50 or so, particularly Cubans, played in the major leagues because they were either Caucasian or light enough to pass. Other players, the great Cuban Martin de Higo, who's in the Hall of Fame and played for the Homestead Grays, Cristobal Torriente, Jesus de la Caridad Mendez, all played in the Negro Leagues. Horacio Martinez and Titelo Vargas from the Dominican Republic, Orlando Cepeda's father, Perichin, Louis Tiant Jr.'s father, Louis Tiant Sr. So just as Negro Leaguers and white major leaguers went to the Caribbean all the time to play, those guys came and played here, and they were part of really a transatlantic baseball world in those years.
Well, that's great. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of this panel tonight, and for you being in our audience tonight. We have learned so much. And I just want to say also that if you want to be greater enriched, if you've ever have the means to go to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, Missouri, had to sneak that in. It's really an astounding place. I spent all day there. I was almost late for the game. And of course, all the organizations that you guys are affiliated with. We got to thank the Heinz for hosting us tonight and for the Pirates for putting this on. Thank you so much for having us tonight. Refreshments are downstairs, so please stick around.